Imprisoned in the underworld by his sons Zeus and Hades, none are prepared for the wrath of Kronos, father of the gods, king of the Titans, destroyer of the universe. Once betrayed by his children, Kronos returns for his revenge. When the Titan King rises, the world will end. Wrath of the Titans.
In Greek mythology, Kronos is the god of time. He once ruled the universe until it was stolen from him by Zeus. Christopher Lloyd is our Zeus resonator, and he battles Kronos' clock tower in the synchronistic epic Back to the Future. The Greeks' story said that Kronos was defeated by Zeus by way of his lightning bolt. Christopher Lloyd kills the clock tower with a lightning bolt, and since Kronos was the god of time, or the titan of time, it seems fitting that he would be represented by a gigantic, inanimate, but still antagonistic clock tower. Kronos was also a god who embodied limitation, darkness, death, and the color black. He was almost always depicted carrying a scythe, which is why his modern-day adaptation, the Grim Reaper, Death, also carries the scythe. The theme of escaping death is exemplified by the construction of a time machine, which is why Lloyd builds one, because Lloyd is Zeus, and Back to the Future is the story of how Zeus defeated the god of time, limitation, darkness, and death, Kronos. Kronos was the leader of the Titans, and his death marked the end of their reign over the universe, which humanity still celebrates to this day by lighting a gigantic torch, the Olympic torch, which honors the victory of the Olympian gods and their rise to power in the cosmos. This is why the leader of the Olympian gods, Zeus, lights a gigantic torch immediately after symbolically killing the leader of the Titans, Kronos, which signified the victory of the Olympian gods. Today, we also celebrate Zeus's victory by the running of the torch, which Christopher Zeus Lloyd also does, immediately after killing Kronos. Take a look at the strange nature in which Christopher Lloyd blazes down this trail of fire. He is clearly running as if symbolically gripping and hoisting something in his hand. His arm is not only awkwardly raised, but his hand is cupped and held in a position that defies all logic, unless you take into account that he is acting out the Olympic torch run, if only subconsciously, which makes perfect sense since he is running down a trail of fire. These two acts, the lighting of a gigantic torch at the Temple of Hera and the subsequent running of the torch, are still and were always performed in honor of Zeus's victory over Kronos. So is it only a coincidence that Christopher Zeus Lloyd performs these acts immediately after striking down a giant clock with a bolt of lightning, while simultaneously transcending humanity's most insurmountable limitations, those of being trapped in time? Is this a reenactment of the Olympic ceremonies and the Olympian mythology of the rise of the Olympian gods? After a closer look, you will see that it clearly is. According to the Greek myth, Zeus is not alone during the battle. He had the help of his two brothers, Poseidon and Hades. Zeus is the personification of the planet Jupiter, Kronos the personification of Saturn, while Hades is the personification of the planet Pluto. If this is truly a reenactment of the Olympian rise to power, then we should find both Hades and Poseidon present at the scene. Luckily, Hades is so clearly represented by Marty McFly that it is almost laughable. We learn that Universal Studios head Sig Sheinberg advocated a replacement of the title Back to the Future with Spaceman from Pluto, referring to Marty McFly, who was even supposed to state the line, "I am a spaceman from Pluto," which would have overtly stated his Hades-Pluto synchronistic entrainment. In this scene, Marty McFly is identified as a godlike alien supremacy from, of course, Pluto.
Hey, Doc?
Then there's the introduction of Marty McFly, where for the first time ever he enters into frame to garner first impressions from an estranged audience, only to draw the audience's attention directly to the element plutonium, which is directly named after the planet Pluto. He is introducing himself, not just as Marty McFly, but as an earthly personification of the planet Pluto, and thus the god Hades. Each of the three brothers had a special weapon which they used during the battle against the god of time, Cronus. Zeus had his lightning bolt, Poseidon had his trident, Hades had his helm of darkness, which made him invisible. In the second film, Marty becomes the Invisible Man, wearing a black hat and an all-black disguise in an attempt to be unseen, which he achieves for a large portion of the film, whereby he walks about in broad daylight and plain sight but is never spotted. Invisibility is his power. Marty is also the only character in the entire trilogy to ever actually turn somewhat invisible. Thus we have the two brothers, Zeus and Hades, fighting against Cronus' clock tower. The scene has come together quite nicely. If only we could find the last piece of the puzzle, the third brother, Poseidon, somewhere. This scene happens moments before the clock tower fight scene. Hades is doing his invisible thing, and there he is. The last piece of the Olympian god puzzle falls solidly into place, and our Olympian trio materializes, ready for a reenactment of the transition from the age of Saturn, Cronus, to the age of Zeus, Jupiter. In the midst of the battle, we are hit with a remarkable sync event. This exploding clock is followed up instantaneously by the flashing of the commonly associated alternative name of Cronus Saturn, L. Watch as Cronus announces his presence with the exploding clock, and then the flashing of his name across the screen, roaring through the very fabric of the film to identify himself as the deity associated with all the time travel, clock tower madness. This ritual represents the end of the reign of Saturn, which is why it takes place late at night on Saturday, the end of the day of Saturday, the end of the day of Saturn.
Next Saturday night, we're sending you back to the future.
Okay, all right. Saturday's good. Saturday's good.
Jupiter is the astrological ruler of the zodiac signs 12, Pisces, and 9, Sagittarius, which is why, amidst the celebration, Zeus Jupiter Lloyd stands inside the astrological symbol of the 12th sign, Pisces, while just over his left shoulder is a giant 9, drawing our attention to the 9th sign, Sagittarius, whose symbol is an arrow. Luckily for us, this giant 9, curiously enough, is made out of an arrow.